there. This is Kara Mergl. She is the owner of Kara Mergl Photography. I'm sorry, Kara. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and just say hello.
Sure. I'm excited to be joining you tonight for this conversation. As you said, my name is Kara Mergl. I am a business owner. I own Kara Mergl Photography, which I launched actually just recently over this past summer.
Wonderful. So I want to just let people know that if you're here watching and you stay on the video live stream, that you will be, if you would like, entered to win this special animal communication consultation with me. It's a distance animal communication consultation. We would just need you to type in the comments section animal communication. And then at the end of the show, I'm going to just do a random sort of drawing for whoever's going to win that. And Kara will also tell you about how you can have your pet featured in this really exciting project. So, Kara, can you please talk to us a little bit about sort of your background and how you got into photography?
Sure. So I actually have a really interesting background. I am not a photographer first. I guess I'll put it that way. I'm actually a social worker by training. I've spent several years working in the field of social justice on different issues. I've worked in child welfare. I've worked on sustainable supply chain and animal welfare issues. Currently focused on policy issues related to housing and homelessness. So you can see, obviously, there's no photography in there. But as a hobby, I've been doing photography for about 17 years. I studied it in college. I worked in dark rooms and developed my own film back when film was still really relevant and a thing. And over this past summer, as I said, I decided to turn it into a business. I found that I, of course, had more time on my hands. Usually I travel extensively for my work, and the pandemic had basically grounded me. Indefinitely. And so, both as just the extra time on my hand and something to really find a creative outlet for a time that was just really quiet and really scary if I let myself think about it too much, I decided to launch my own photography business with a focus on pets. I have a pet myself, so I enjoy working with animals and being around them, and had been volunteering with some rescue groups at that point. And so I felt like that was a good way to sort of start a business and create a niche for myself in the photography world.
That's wonderful. So you, like a lot of people, kind of took advantage of the extra time with the pandemic and really kind of delved into something that was more like a hobby, but you kind of made it into something else. So that's really cool. And something that animals really, I think, did for a lot of people. They inspired people to do different things. And that's just one of the things that wonderful things that animals do for us. So, and interesting, we both have that same background in social work and certain
Mm-hmm.
aspects of it, like child welfare. So, we are going to bring up some photos of some of the animals that Kara has photographed in just a moment. But I just want to have you talk a little bit about go more into the pets in the pandemic
Yes.
project. Just tell us a little bit more about it and who you photographed, things like that, like how you got and who, also who it's benefiting, because I know there's an aspect of this that is kind of a donation aspect of it that's wonderful. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So the idea really came out, I think, of two places. So the first, as I mentioned, I have a pet myself, and I really found myself, of course, working from home as part of my full-time job, and in what otherwise would have been a really quiet house, and I often found myself talking to Fred, who's my cat. And honestly, if you have a pet and you're not talking out loud to your pet, like, I don't know why you have a pet then.
right, exactly.
So I would find myself talking to Fred, and I think if you're an animal owner, you know that, I think animals can often sense like if you're upset or you just need sort of a warm lap. And Fred really became my companion. Um, I of course do video calls with my coworkers and things like that. And thanks to starting the photography business, had the ability to start sort of interacting with folks on a limited and distance basis, but always safely doing that. But some interactions, but most of the time, I was just really like, well, if I didn't have Fred, like who would I be talking to most of the time?
Right.
So I think that was part of it, and then I think the other part of it was really um, seeing the just huge boom around fostering and adopting
Yeah.
that became part of the conversation. I think early on in the pandemic, we really saw that growing. And then
Right.
certainly as I started doing more of the photography work, just talking to my clients and talking to them about, how things have been going for them and,
Hmm.
what made their dog so special, their cat so special. It really created these conversations that planted the seed for the idea.
Hmm.
So initially, I decided to focus on therapy dogs. So a lot of the dogs that we're going to talk about today are actually certified pet therapy animals, and approached an organization called Creature Comfort Pet Therapy,
Hmm.
who, without knowing even a ton of details, graciously agreed to be a partner on the project, and started connecting me with their volunteer families and their dogs. Um, and so I had an opportunity to really sit down and really speak with a lot of those folks and get a better understanding of, well, I think two dynamics. First, what were the therapy dogs doing during the pandemic? How were they responding to it or not responding to it?
Hmm.
Um, and then sort of what role were they playing in their own families' lives now that their sort of quote unquote professional role doing in-person visits as part of their certification had really, that dynamic had really changed.
Hmm.
Um, so as I said, Creature Comfort, really gracious, said, sure, we'll work with you, and started connecting me with their families. We're in conversation to bring on a few more partner organizations, foster groups, different animal groups
Okay.
that can also facilitate that conversation. And as part of the project now, we've actually launched on our website a gallery shop, if you will. You think about sort of walking through the museum and ending your
Wonderful.
trip in the gallery shop.
Yeah.
And 50% of the proceeds that we make from the gallery shop will actually be donated back to our partner organizations.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful. So we're going to have information too about that website and where you can go to check that out. That's wonderful. And hello, Tammy Mastro. Thank you for being here. And again, if you are interested in being entered into the raffle for the free animal communication consultation with me, please type animal communication into the comments section. And I'm going to do a random drawing at the end of the call and end of the video. Um, so I'm thinking, why don't we go ahead and bring up these beautiful pictures? They're really incredible. I believe we were going to start with Oreo, who is actually a doggy who I spoke with in an animal communication consultation. And it's how I was led to contact Kara because during the conversation, the pet parent, Lisa, told me that, Oreo had been sort of sidelined a little bit from his role as a therapy dog because of the pandemic. He couldn't go to all the places that they used to go to. She wanted to know how he was doing. She kind of suspected that it was affecting him. And certainly it was. We did find out during the consultation that he was feeling kind of down and depressed, and that he wanted to try to do something to kind of get back to it. And I had to sort of explain to him how long it was going to take, which we don't know for sure, but I gave him sort of that picture of maybe spring, summer. So, Kara, I just wanted to give a little intro, but why don't you tell us about Oreo and your interaction with him and this photo, this gorgeous, gorgeous photo. I love this.
Thank you. Yeah, so actually before I talk about Oreo, I want to talk a little bit about the series of portraits that you're going to see. Um, so you're gonna notice that these are like portraits, right? I think often take photos of our animals. We pull out their iPhone, we take some quick clips, and we see our animals sort of in these cutesy, silly light, which they are, right? That's the role that they often play in our life. They bring some levity to it and some laughter. And so I really wanted to make a distinction with this project that um, while these still are our animals, their importance has been elevated because of the pandemic.
Right.
And so the portraits, it's really like sometimes we laugh. I've shared some of these like with my brother or with my friends, and they'll say like, "Wow, these look like they should have like cabinet positions, right?" And so that is really the
Love it.
feeling that I want to evoke from the portraits. I want to elevate the animals to the level of importance that they have played. It's certainly not comparing them to presidents, but when you think about presidential portraits, which is appropriate for this historical inauguration day,
Right.
and you
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
about that sort of, you know, really elevated stature.
Right.
I really wanted to reflect that and create that difference in the pictures that you normally see of animals. So I just wanted to
Wonderful.
sort of talk a little bit about that because the portraits are sometimes so serious and they're so, almost like regal.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of walk through why that was.
Why that was. Yeah. I mean, they're I love it. They're beautiful. And Tammy mentions that we love Oreo, so I guess she's with Creature Comfort. He's the one that influenced me to get involved in pet therapy with my dog Ollie. Oh, he's
Oh,
inspired.
that's
And then
fantastic.
somebody whose name I can't see, but it says K. Oh, it's Lisa, who's Oreo's mom. She's here.
Yes, hi Lisa.
She says hello, and thanks Tammy and Ollie too. Wonderful. Um, so
Yeah,
he's
so
yeah.
should I talk about Oreo a
Yeah,
bit?
absolutely.
Yeah, so I want to actually give a shout out to Lisa because Lisa was really great. She was the first volunteer on this project, and actually jumped on board before Creature Comfort did. Just I was sort of reaching out individually, and I said, "Hey, is this something you would like to do?" And so I'm so appreciative to Lisa for so many reasons,
Oh,
both for just saying yes and introducing me to Oreo, connecting us. She's just been a champion, and all
great.
the sort of likes and clicks on social media. It's been really wonderful to always see Lisa behind that. So thank you, Lisa. So this is Oreo. There's a couple really amazing things about Oreo. So Oreo is actually deaf, which I thought was incredible, right? And one of the things that I learned very quickly in talking to Lisa and doing the photo shoot with Oreo is that he actually responds to visual cues instead of verbal cues. And it was something that Lisa really had to take into consideration when they were pursuing the pet therapy certification. If he would be able to pass because of sort of this physical challenge of his. And it turns out he did just fine.
Mhm.
And so my favorite thing that I learned, you actually, instead of saying sit, you sort of, make one of these muscles, and that's Oreo's command to sit. So it was
Oh,
really wonderful to see that. The other thing that I really loved about meeting Oreo is he's sort of this vibrant, playful pup. Um, and when we do the shoot, we try to do shoots both without the therapy vest and then with the therapy vest.
okay.
And he, playful, just like wanting to hang out and play. And then Lisa said, "Oh, okay, let's get his vest on." And it was Oreo ready to work. It was really,
Oh,
really wonderful to see where he just sort of snapped into this, like, okay, let's do this. We're ready. Um,
so
and that
cool.
was really great. Yeah. And so Lisa also told me this really wonderful story about um, the way that Oreo interacts, that he really sort of understands what each person needs when he's on the job and can sort of seek out the people that need him most.
Hmm.
And one of the stories that really stood out for her was a time when they responded to going into a school after a teacher had passed away. And so they were going in to be with the children. And, Oreo went up to one of the young girls and just sat there like for a couple hours. And, Lisa and her husband Ken can talk about sort of the very physical shift that the little girl went through. And, you just saw her sort of relieve some stress and feel a little bit more comfortable. And they sat there quietly. And it wasn't until afterwards that Lisa realized and found out that it was actually the daughter of the teacher who had passed away. And that was who Oreo sought out in that moment. He sort of just, knew to go to her. So that was really incredible. So with the pandemic, there's been, which sort of has been the majority of the therapy dogs that I've worked with, have transitioned to some kind of virtual visiting. And that looks like, reading with children or doing bingo nights, that sort of thing. But of course, it's just not the same as doing the in-person visits. And so one of the things I thought that was really special that Lisa also talked about was how, the support that Oreo has really brought to her family, as he's made this transition. We've all made this transition to being at home more, and how he's really sort of motivated her and kept her going, and how his response to them brings this happiness because he's always happy. Even if it's just going to the mailbox and back, Oreo welcomes them, tail wagging, ready to give love and be loved. And so it's just a really special relationship that they have with him. And I was very fortunate to meet his sister Chloe, who's also a very, very beautiful dog. And so they both sort of bring that joy to Ken and Lisa right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, he talked to me too about like a specific girl that he remembered. And it was very interesting. I obviously forgot to turn off some setting, and I apologize. Something's going on with the beeping, but he talked about how before I kind of knew that he was doing therapy work, I guess I talked to his sister, interestingly, but didn't talk to him in the past. And then when I talked to him, he mentioned that he likes to put on his cape. And when I said that to Lisa, she said, "Oh, that's his jacket, which he's wearing in this picture here, that he, snaps into this other kind of, his professional role when he goes out to do his work." And he's wonderful. He's really a wonderful example of how animals are just so in tune with people. And, just the example you gave about the little girl whose father had died, perfect example of just how animals are so in tune with us. So wonderful. So let's go on now. I think we were going to bring up your
angel, so this should be Fred. Yeah.
Let's bring up Fred.
So Fred right now is the only cat in the project. So cat owners, stay tuned if you want to be involved. We definitely need more cats. So I talked a little bit about Fred already, but what I didn't talk about is his background and sort of how we came to know each other, if you will. So I actually adopted Fred in the summer of 2019. This was after my cat, Belle, who I had for 14 years. She was like, my ride and die. We had traveled all over the place, moved to all these different cities. I got her a few days after I had left college, and, we had just done it all together. And she passed away, and I just thought, I can never love another animal again. And then the house was really quiet, and I really, really missed her.
Right.
And so I decided to, look into adopting another animal. I knew that there are just animals that like historically have challenges being adopted. So if they're older or they have a disability. And so I actually went to an adoption event hoping to adopt. There was a tripod kitty who had her back leg amputated, and I thought no one's going to adopt this poor cat with 3 legs. Turns out, cat was gone by the time I got there. And so I said, well, like, who else do you have? And I met Fred. So Fred was actually rescued at 6 months old, but kept in a cage for about 4 years after he was rescued. And basically, as a result of that, Fred became, believe it or not, agoraphobic. He was terrified of open space, only comfortable sort of in his box. Even meeting him at the adoption center, he wouldn't come out of his cubby. But there was something about Fred that you could really see his desire to really wanted to be affectionate. And so when you go over to his cubby, Fred's favorite sign of affection is giving you headbutts. He would stand there and give you headbutts and headbutts and headbutts, but just wouldn't come out of his cubby. So I decided to adopt Fred and took on the challenge of, figuring out how to take him from being comfortable, in a 3x3 cubby to where he is now, which you might see him run behind me at some point because he's all over the place. And this really turned into quite an exercise of, reading animal behavior books, trying to understand, what would make him comfortable. And, literally keeping him in one room until he was totally comfortable being in that room, coming out from under the chair. And then from that room, I bought baby gates essentially and had baby gates up all over the house, even though I don't have babies, as a way to then sort of give him his one room and a piece of the hallway. And then from there, it was his one room, a piece of the hallway, and the bedroom. And this process literally over the course of 9 months sort of happened inch by inch throughout the apartment, which really took us to just about March when the pandemic hit. So it was this really sort of interesting time where he was really just at a place where he was fully integrated into the apartment around this time last year, around February, March. And then, of course, I found myself at home, more often. Then a couple months into the pandemic, my marriage dissolved. And so we really just found myself, it was like me and Fred, right? And as I talked about earlier, it was just sort of like, gosh, who else would I be talking to right now? It really was an opportunity to, have interaction. Fred is consistent and insistent every morning at 6 a.m. needs to be Fred. There's no sleeping through that. And so he really created this sort of rhythm in the day to day. And it was this really interesting role reversal of, really, and I live in New York City. And of course that was sort of the epicenter at the start of the pandemic where the numbers were just really high. And we didn't know what was going on. I had family who had COVID in April. And so sort of just all of the fear around that, Fred took to similarly to how I would sit down with him and just sort of give him the space to feel more comfortable and feel more okay. Fred took on that role for me where he would just sit with me, sit on my lap, and really sort of just be with me through this really scary time when we really didn't know what was happening, around March, around April. So, we've become quite bonded over the last couple of months, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, they're incredibly grounding animals. They're wonderful. And, cats just, like you're talking about. I'm sorry, while you were talking, I was having to adjust a light because my cat decided that she had to go through the light. She couldn't, between that and something else, she couldn't go another route. So, cats are interesting creatures. Some call them aliens. But we love them. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
okay, well, Fred, and then after Fred, we were going to talk about who was the next one we were going to go to here? Was Snuggles?
So I think, well, we can talk about any Leo. If you pull Leo up, I can chat about Leo, and then I think Snuggles after that.
Leo.
Yep, there's Leo.
Leo reminds me of my Cheyenne a little bit. So beautiful. He's so, or handsome, I guess I should say.
Yes, he's very
Gorgeous.
handsome.
Yeah.
So Leo actually has this really interesting origin story. His owner, Angela, her family has a home in Sicily. It's a family home.
Oh, wow.
And her uncle had sent her some photos of a renovation that they did. She said, I noticed this, just dog hanging out under the new awning. And I jokingly said to my uncle, like, does the dog come with the house? And it turns out, months later, when she traveled to Sicily and was spending time in the family home, the dog was still there. And this was Leo.
Oh, wow.
And, she spent time around the neighborhood. Everyone loved the dog. People would feed the dog, but no one claimed the dog. No one was rescuing the dog. So he hung out, gentle as can be, just, hung out with the neighbors, did what he needed to do. And Angela said, you know what? I'm taking this dog back to Brooklyn with me.
Wow.
So she did the work, with a local vet, filled out all the paperwork to travel, all the vaccinations, all that kind of stuff. And now Leo is a Brooklynite. Which I absolutely love.
Yeah, like many
about
Italian
that story.
immigrants.
Exactly, exactly. And so Angela herself is actually a school teacher, and had been taking Leo with her as part of a school pet therapy program before the pandemic. And the kids just really, really loved Leo. What was also really great is that Angela lives and works, the school that she works in literally is across the street from her. And so it's this really great neighborhood effect that the kids would see Leo in school, they would see Leo out of school, at the shops, stuff like that. And so Leo actually became quite popular and sort of a local celebrity in his neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I saw this, sort of play out too. I met her, at a park, and hey Leo, everyone was sort of stopping to pet him. The park worker, knows him by name. They come, they love on him for a few minutes. So it's this really beautiful dynamic in the neighborhood that they've created. And so when the pandemic hit, Leo and Angela's story as a therapy dog is actually sort of a role reversal than a lot of the other therapy dogs that I've been chatting with, because Leo went from doing sort of a number of in classroom visits, but you could physically only do so many of those, get to one place, to another, on any given day. But as Angela transitioned online, it meant that Leo could be with her essentially in every class.
Right.
And she took on more classes, sort of as the New York City public school system went all online as well. And so she incorporated Leo not just into his like regular reading program, but really she had these great stories of how she teaches younger children, sort of 5 to 10 years old. And as she's teaching them, social emotional learning, and she would say, think about, where your happy place is. Sort of, we're going to, think about new foods we're going to try. She would create these little vignettes and these little videos of Leo, sort of demonstrating the lesson. So the where's your happy place, she had this great video of Leo on a beach, and him demonstrating that this was his happy place. So Leo's sort of local celebrity status after that even boomed even more because he was getting exposed to so many more children. The other thing that I really love about Leo is that the kids at school would often before the pandemic, send notes home with Angela to give to Leo and say, could you give this to Leo? And the note would just say, thank you, Leo, for letting me talk to you. Just very simple, with something that a second grader would do.
Right.
But they wanted to make sure that Leo knew that he was really loved and really special to them. And so that sort of translated during the pandemic. They couldn't give him notes, but what Angela did see was that they were showing up more consistently for her class. And I think it's probably no surprise if you have parents, you have nieces and nephews, the online learning has been a real challenge. It's hard to keep kids motivated. It's not sort of how folks learn traditionally. But Leo got the kids to keep coming back and keep coming back.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they were all sort of still in their neighborhood, even though they were in their homes and not at the school, Leo continued to, as folks were out on walks, as you were going to the grocery store, still seeing Leo in that dynamic created like one line of consistency for these children. Sort of everything else had changed in their life, but seeing Leo in the neighborhood and being able to talk to him online and in the neighborhood just sort of gave them momentarily on the sidewalk that sense of normalcy back for a few minutes, which I just thought was really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really neat story. I think my happy place is back where Leo's from in Italy, but, but that's a really cool story. He is a handsome devil. Okay, so who's next?
So let's chat about Snuggles.
Okay. And Tammy does say Oreo is a superhero with his cape. He definitely is. Okay. Snuggles.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Snuggles. So I love the idea. They said, we're going to connect you with Nancy. She has this great dog, Snuggles. And I thought, what kind of dog is Snuggles? Like, that's the best dog name ever, right? And when I pulled up to the park, there was a woman in the car in front of me, and she had like a Yorkie poo or something, very tiny little fluffy dog. And I thought, of course that is Snuggles, because a dog with a name like Snuggles is. And I said, hi, are you Nancy? And she went, no. And then I saw Nancy in her Creature Comfort sweatshirt walking Snuggles, and I thought, well, I really got that wrong. Like, definitely not what I had in mind. But Snuggles is exactly what you would imagine he is in terms of sort of his personality that a dog like Snuggles would have.
Right.
And so Nancy's actually the scheduler for Creature Comfort, and sort of worked in the trenches as it relates to sort of transitioning a lot of the therapy dogs from their in-person to their online work. So it was really great just chatting with her about how that process has been. And I think sort of there's this universal acknowledgement that like it really doesn't compare to the in-person benefits of being with therapy animals, but it's something, right? And people are responding, and the fact that they're still accessible through these virtual visits, and limited in-person visits have happened from time to time. It's still a really important response and critical response during this time. Now, Snuggles himself has, another incredible origin story. The spoiler alert is that he is a foster fail for Nancy. And she actually saw him at an event one day when she was there volunteering on behalf of Creature Comfort. And she talks about how she, saw him from afar. He was up for adoption through what is a very well-known kill shelter in the area. And she just sort of throughout the day kept her eye on him. And she said, as gentle and as kind as can be to just everybody that came up to him. And so she finally walked over to say hi herself and realized that he actually had mange. And so if you're not a dog person or you've never had a dog with mange, it's actually a parasite that gets into your skin and essentially causes lesions all over your body. So imagine the pain that Snuggles was in.
Snuggles.
Imagine the stress of just being in an animal
Yeah.
shelter environment.
Right.
Juxtapose that with the gentle animal
Oh.
that Snuggles was. And Nancy said, she was immediately brought to tears, and
Oh.
she knew she had to get him. And so her plan was get Snuggles, get him healthy, get him adopted. And failed miserably, right? Snuggles, that plan did not last very long at all. And Snuggles, she realized Snuggles was already at home. He quickly, just became part of the family. And because he was so gentle and has this demeanor, which is sort of consistent with the therapy dogs, there's this gentleness about them. They're very calm. That's what sort of provides that calming effect to interact with, individuals and children. Snuggles became a therapy dog. And so he has done some he has done some online visits as well. But if you want to transition over to the second picture of Snuggles, so as I said, we met in a park one day, and we tried to do some photos with and without his vest. And it was just this incredible response that as soon as Snuggles put his vest on, the families that were in the park just basically flocked to him. Was this really, and it was a transition of like vest, no vest, because there were certainly families that walked by when he didn't have his vest on, and they were sort of like, cool, you're doing a photo shoot, let me just sneak by. And then he put his vest on, and that didn't matter. It didn't matter I was standing there holding the camera. It didn't matter anything. They wanted to hang out with Snuggles. And so it was great. The family has let us take some pictures as well. But I really love this picture because, this little girl was so excited to meet Snuggles. But in the series sort of leading up to this moment, as I was snapping my camera, there's a hesitancy at first where she's kind of like, this is a dog. And you can even see in this picture, her hand is out to sort of let Snuggles smell her and see, is this okay? And he was just amazing. He was so amazing with her, and let her sort of slowly come to him, slowly get comfortable. And the point that she's now putting her hand on his back and starting to pet him, it took a few seconds in there before she got there. But I think really what this moment speaks to is that when the families, and particularly the children, saw Snuggles in this vest, there was sort of this indication that he was open to interact, and probably in a way, right, that because of the distancing, even in your families, I'm sure these children are getting lots of love from their parents, it's not that, but being separated from everybody else, there was this desire to really connect with him in a way that maybe wouldn't have been the same otherwise, if we hadn't been in the middle of a pandemic. So it was really just beautiful to watch these children approach him, and his response to them totally just was like, yeah, I'm here for it. I got the vest on, like, let's do this.
Right. Yeah. He's great. Gorgeous. Okay. So thank you. Now, who is next?
So we have Keena next.
Oh, wow. Keena's beautiful. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Keena.
So she is really beautiful. So Keena, she's actually the 17th Great Dane that her owner Kristen has had. Now 4 of those have been her own, and then she has fostered 14 or 15 Great Danes. And so Kristen really talks about, of all of those 17 dogs, and she's had other dogs as well, but like particularly the Great Dane breed. She instantly knew there was something different about Keena. Keena's really the only one who is a certified therapy dog. It's not, I think Kristen had done it, years before with her first dog. But really recognizing that it's not, every dog is not cut out for this, and at the same time instantly realizing that Keena was. But she also talks about this beautiful bond that had developed between them, because Keena was also incredibly shy.
Oh,
And
okay.
so she basically worked with her, sort of the time that they spent together, working through the certification and doing the training, really created this unique bond and
Mm-hmm.
sort of this absolute trust, between the both of them. And so it was a process of Keena opening up, as she became a therapy dog, and then early on in her days, where at first Kristen would sort of show her, like, okay, let's go talk to this person, let's go talk to that person. And it didn't take a lot of time for her to make the transition of like feeling more confident, and just then knowing, sort of the trend with a lot of the dogs is sort of knowing who needs her most in the room.
Yeah.
So the sort of the way that they came together and bonded over, going to the pet therapy sessions and really trusting each other to, go through that process, it really helped Keena flourish in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So much so, and I love this part of her story. She tried her hand at acting, or tried her paw, if you will, at acting, and was in a television series with Al Pacino.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and so actually, if you go to my website, in Keena's story, there's a link, because it's in one of the Amazon series. The series was called Hunters, and one of the sort of still photos that they use for an episode is, Keena, this beautiful dog, sitting on the couch. And so you can see one of her stills from the
Oh,
series.
cool. Huh.
So, Keena became so confident that she, showed Al
Wow.
Pacino a thing or two, with her own acting chops. Um, yeah, so that was really great. And of course, similarly, when the transition hit, or when the pandemic hit, it totally transitioned everything, for Keena. She did do some Zoom visits and online, visits, as well, but for her, really the biggest difference, in the work that was going on, and particularly for Kristen, was not only transitioning to Zoom, as Kristen did as well for her work, um, but really becoming, for Kristen and Kristen's coworkers on Zoom, the thing to talk about, when the pandemic became sort of unbearable, and when everyone was sort of, fearful, and
Right.
we still have those calls where you get on and it's just like, it's overwhelming some days.
Mm-hmm.
And, particularly early on, when things were just, we didn't really even have a sense of what was going to happen,
Right.
Keena became the thing that folks focused on.
Oh,
And so I thought that was really, a really beautiful way
yeah.
for her to, sort of use her selfless powers
Yep.
to come into
Mm-hmm.
a situation and just kind of take over in this humble way where folks could really
Mm-hmm.
concentrate on her.
Wow. Pretty cool story. And she went right to the top. Al Pacino.
Yeah,
She didn't, play
exactly.
around. She like,
No, no commercials, no nothing. She
yeah,
went right
right.
for Al
She
Pacino. Yep. Yep.
as it should be. Um,
Exactly.
and so we have time for a couple more. We have Paige and Story, and they are actually sisters, right? Or maybe we can't get them both in.
Yes.
Maybe I'll do one at a time
Oh, do
here.
we got
So
them both? Or go ahead,
I
do
think
whatever you. So this
I
is,
don't think I
Paige.
can
Yep.
yet. Okay. Well,
So
here
this is
I'll cut me out
Paige,
and I'll
and
put
we'll.
her in. We'll put
Oh,
Story with Paige. There we go.
so they are not genetically sisters, but they are sisters, owned by the same owner, Mo. And so Paige is actually currently a therapy dog. Paige is on your left. She's, or my left. She's the one looking sideways. Story is the one looking forward. Story is actually a therapy dog in training. So it was really neat to learn about that as well. So Paige became a therapy dog in 2019. And Mo talks about how, I should also say that both Mo or both Paige and Story um, are sort of champion dogs. They've do a lot of training. They do nose work, which is what it sounds like. They sort of find scents as a competition. They do diving competitions. They're involved in like hunting retrieval. So these dogs are very agile. They're very active. And with Paige, she became a therapy dog and sort of had the same agility, if you will, with like wanting to be a therapy dog. She was really active, like really sort of racking up, if you will, the number of visits that she was doing. And this started in the fall of 2019. So they were sort of on track with this goal of hitting 100 visits in 2020. And then the pandemic hit, and it was sort of really disappointing because it just stopped her. And sort of that goal of like, okay, we're going to get to 100 visits just sort of stopped at 25. And then Mo is one of the owners, and Paige, one of the therapy dogs who have had a chance to talk with, who actually did an in-person visit during the pandemic. And this was Paige's 26th visit. It's the one that she was, able to get in during the pandemic. And Mo was actually contacted by a friend, and the friend's father, Jack, was actually put into home hospice care. He was quite ill. And so they said, would it be okay if Paige came and did a visit? And so, of course, they followed all the guidelines, masked up, took all of the precautions that they needed to take, but went and did a visit with Jack. And, Mo talks about this really incredible moment that, in total silence, really just passed between Jack and Paige. And one of the things that, she learned afterwards was that Jack sort of had a reprieve. He had this moment where, he sort of came back. He was lucid, and can we say that it was, exactly because of Paige's visit? I'd like to think that it had something to do with it, right? And so it was this really just amazing, even though, she sort of had to slow down in terms of like, getting to this goal of 100, this one became this really incredible and really important visit that she was able to do while, that wasn't possible for a lot of other therapy dogs. And then Story.
That's wonderful. Beautiful
Yeah,
story.
so Story, as a therapy dog in training, Mo and I talked a lot about like, what does that even take? And one of the things that I thought was incredibly interesting that I don't train dogs, so I don't know that I would have thought of this, is just essentially working with Story to desensitize her to certain sights and sounds and smells, so that there's no sort of surprises when she's doing a therapy visit. Anything she's going to see, hear, smell is something that she's already sort of understood to know not to be afraid of. And so some of those things that Mo talks about were like, she would take her to the park and just acclimate her to things like the sound of ducks. The one that stood out for me was like the sound of a flag waving, which like we don't even really notice stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was something that became, like if you're walking into a hospital, there's probably a giant flag waving outside of it. And so, helping her to hear that sound and acclimate her to it. Or the cleaning machines in the hospital, the vibrations that go through the floor if you're, walking down the hallway. And then masks,
Right.
because dogs looking at people wearing masks were not something that prior to March 2020 was something that really had to give much thought to. And so for Story, certainly as a therapy dog in training, and then for Paige as well, it was something that Mo worked around to make sure that as they were approaching people with masks now, they really understood what that was and what that meant and how to respond to it, which I just thought was incredible.
Yeah. A lot of work goes into them.
Yeah.
My dog Cheyenne was a creature comfort dropout, so I won't even go into that. Some of them are more suited, let's just say that. Stay in your lane. Like, that's all I'm going to say about it.
That's fantastic.
But those are beautiful, beautiful stories. And by the way, if you're on here and you are interested in getting entered in that raffle to win an animal communication consultation, you just need to type animal communication in the comments section. I am going to be drawing that very soon. And we have a comment, love Snuggles. He's awesome to work with too. I'm sure all these dogs are just wonderful. They just seem like such, as all animals are, you know. And I think that the thing that just kind of was driven home for me in hearing all of this is just, you know, how important they are as far as helping us kind of to be grounded, and they help to help people to connect, but they're able to just, you know, as I find all the time when I'm talking with them, they are just so in tune, they're so aware, you know, of what people are feeling, and you know, they'll just kind of go to the right person who needs it. So, you know, they have really struggled. You know, that is the theme, like in the conversations I've had with pet therapy dogs, because I've had many people who have therapy dogs contact me during this, because their animal is maybe acting a little different, or they're just concerned. And it definitely has been a theme, and I think it's been really important to let the animals understand, tell them what's going on, to trust that, you know, all these stories we've heard about these animals tuning into the right individual. So trust that even if you haven't, you know, taken a class or practiced animal communication, trust that the animals are picking up on what you're feeling and what you're thinking. You know, it's really, if you want to be more focused about it, just sit down, do a little meditation, listen to a meditation. I have a free meditation on my website. You can get at intuitivetouchanimalcare.com. I'll have that in the description. You can link to that. Download the free meditation and sit there and, you know, get grounded, tune in, and just show your animal, you know, people wearing masks, say, you know, just the emotion of this is a little strange, and, you know, this is going to end. It is. So show them the summer, show them the sun. You know, that's when we predict, sort of, that's where we think it's going to be a little bit different. Probably things are going to probably change and open up, even just naturally, because it is summer. But show them that things are changing, that they're going to go back to life as normal a little bit more. They're going to be out in contact with people. And you know, if you're going to be going to work, it is important to let them know that you're going to be going back to work. You know, showing them as that time approaches that you're going to be leaving the home, and maybe the light will change from, you know, getting darker outside as you come home, or you going off in your car and coming back. These are just all things you can do. I have a lot of videos on here on YouTube that you can watch that can help you with that too. So, and I do teach classes too. But anyway, we do see Creature Comfort jumping in here and just saying we're so excited to have our therapy pets featured in this project. The pictures and stories are beautiful. They really are. Creature Comfort Pet Therapy is a wonderful organization, by the way, so check them out. And definitely check out Kara's project and her website. I'm going to put that up on the screen here. We're going to have that right there.
Yeah, we made it really easy. So KaraMerglPhotography.com is my business website, which if you're not interested in the project but just want some really cool photos of animals, check that out. I have lots of packages. But if you're interested in the project, it's literally petsandthepandemic.photography. So really, really easy to remember. Dot photography is sort of the new .com for photographers.
Oh, okay.
So super simple to remember. Pets in the Pandemic dot photography.
Excellent. Wonderful. Yeah, you can get some individual photographs done for the project or just because you want to have a really nice picture of you and your pet or your pet alone. So check that out. And we do need to do our raffle too. So let's see here. Who do we have entered? Let's just do a random drawing, and it's going to be Tammy Mastro. So thank you so much for being with us. You've been here throughout the show, Tammy, and we appreciate that. So I will. I don't have your. I'm gonna see if I can find you. I think I might actually have you from the registration, but if reach out to me if you if somehow I miss you. Anne at intuitivetouchanimalcare.com, and with an E. That's in the description too. So thank you so much for being here, Kara, and thank you everyone for being here. We have weekly episodes, so make sure you subscribe and let others know about the show. Like YouTube needs those things; it needs likes and subscribes in order to keep the show going and to reach other people. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all the animals and all